Great. Well, it's 9 o'clock. And welcome everyone to the Wednesday Dialogue. Um, we have Ben Crocker to talk a little bit about his native plant farm. And um, again, this is fairly informal dialogue. Um, Ben, you can give us a little intro if you like, or you can let the questions kind of dictate the flow of the conversation. But really
Right.
appreciate
Yeah,
you
that
being
sounds good.
I appreciate you
Yeah,
being
just
here.
do a um brief, introduction and kind of explain what we're doing out here. And then, yeah, I'm interested to hear what questions you all have and where your interests and queries lie. But yeah,
Great. Thank
my
you.
name's Ben Crocker. I um operate a native plant nursery with my wife Maddie. Our farm is called Bendy Stem Farm. We also raise sheep, incidentally. That's not really what we're talking about today, but just so you know, we're a very small operation. We have like less than a quarter acre of um, container production right now, and yeah, we're specializing in native plants, primarily native plants, native herbaceous perennials from the like grassland and prairie ecosystem of the Lakes region. We select our plants for their aesthetic value and their like value as a ecological service tool. So whether or not they're feeding wildlife and insects, or helping to mitigate storm water, or providing some other like recreational benefit. That's why we're choosing to grow the selection of plants that we're choosing to grow. Yeah, and we've been doing this we really just started the nursery officially in this spring, so spring of 2020. So we're kind of new to the game. I have worked in perennial production for many years. I am from the state of Maryland, and from 2005 to 2014, I was the farm manager on a perennial production nursery out there, and that's where my like passion for plants and my real interest really grew. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. That sounds, I had no idea that you had that much of a history in this. I recently found out that you were selling native plants at the East Lansing market, and we've
Yeah,
discussed native plants quite a bit over the last 2 years in these dialogues. Um, but appreciate that brief introduction. I wonder what questions are on people's minds.
here, I'm gonna go shut the windows in this room because when traffic goes by, it here.
Sounds good.
But yeah, thanks for that. We're also we table at the East Lansing market and the Allen neighborhood farmers market, and we do on farm sales by appointment.
Excellent.
Is your target audience kind of typical homeowners, or is it more a different sort of target audience that you're looking for?
We are interested in marketing to home gardeners. So and everything from like smaller, what I would consider like a restoration project, like a prairie like a small meadow installation, to pollinator gardens, lawn conversions where people are trying to eliminate the lawn that they're maintaining and encourage native plants to take its place. And also people who are just interested in incorporating native plants into their more, I'm going to say traditional, but more traditional, landscape or garden.
Do you do installations as well, or do you help guide people in how to do it?
So right now, yeah, we are available to for consultations, and I can help. Yeah, I can do a site visit and help get a plan together that would include everything from installation, maintenance to preparation. And we hope to be doing installations next season. So yeah, so in spring 2023, yeah, we will be open for installation work.
Where are you located?
We're in Diamond. We're very close to the city of Lansing. We're like 2 miles away from the 96 MLK exit.
You said Diamonddale?
Diamonddale.
Diamonddale. What is the
Yeah,
name?
it's just southwest of Lansing. Yeah, we're right in between two the Lansing Road 96 exits and the MLK 96 exit.
What would you say the name of your farm is?
It's Bendy Stem Farm.
Bendy Stem?
Bendy, BENDY.
Oh, Bendy.
Yeah, yeah. So it's my name and the last letters of my wife's name, Maddie.
What other questions do people have?
Ben, I have a question regarding, I'm really interested in the concept of lawn conversions,
Yeah.
but in Meridian Township, I think you would run into a problem with the zoning ordinances we have here for lawn conversions. I'm not sure exactly what the height, the maximum lawn height allowed is, if somebody wanted to convert their lawn to native plants, especially prairie plants. I don't think they would let you do that in Meridian Township because they only allow lawns to be a certain height.
Yes, we would. If we saw that it was, I've talked to our zoning, our code enforcement people. There's a clear difference between you're not mowing your lawn and the weeds are growing up versus this is intentional in what you're trying to do. If it was an intentional looking thing, we wouldn't bother you.
Has been a conflict though, where that line has been a little bit blurry and a little less well defined. I know that there are a number of states have legislation that really explicitly protect the interest of pollinator friendly landscaping or native plant landscaping. And I don't think Michigan has anything as explicit as that. I know Maryland does. That's kind of how I found out about it from folks back home. But I know I've heard the same thing from folks that live in the city of Lansing, that the code enforcement people, as long as there is a noticeable effort to be creating like an ecosystem or to be landscaping, that they like waive whatever restrictions are there concerning people's lawn maintenance. I still do think that there are people that have, you know, what they think of as pollinator garden installations that get like code infraction citations.
Ben, this is actually on our council agenda. I'm not sure why I'm getting an echo here. Yeah, we talked about it at our our council meeting last night, and we are reviewing our ordinances. But so
Oh, great.
far, code enforcement have been very tolerant of intentional plantings here in the
Mhm.
township.
Yeah, I mean, I know in driving around Meridian Township, I see lots of, you know, pollinator gardens, small meadow installations. I feel like it's becoming a more popular like design aesthetic within the community, and it's definitely noticeable.
What kind of plants do you advise for lawn conversions?
So, yeah, when thinking about converting a lawn, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the like other site characteristics like soil quality or the amount of the sun exposure. But primarily we're using plants that are from the prairie or grassland ecosystem or the savanna ecosystem. So a high percentage of perennial forbs, so perennial wildflowers, and then also incorporating perennial grasses and possibly like some thicket species or small trees, depending on the size of the landscape that you have available. But yeah, mostly wildflowers would really be the backbone of it. And I think the like naturally occurring prairie ecosystem is predominantly grasses that don't offer as high of a aesthetic value, and also don't offer as much like biological support as a lot of the wildflowers provide. They don't provide the same amount of food basically for insect populations as a lot of the wildflowers and forbs do. And they without regular burning or regular grazing by large quadrupeds, they tend to they will just become the dominant species of your landscape. So so I think yes, I think like functionally we kind of reverse the ratio where you know, a prairie that you find, like a remnant prairie that you would find undisturbed in a natural setting, would be high percentage grasses, low percentage wildflowers. We do the kind of the opposite of that.
Great. What other questions people have?
You know, I've got
Unfortunately, yeah.
go ahead.
Unfortunately, I just lost connection, and I was really looking forward to this because I'm having landscaping done very soon, and I'm trying to figure out the native part. But I'll listen to the recording afterwards, Leroy. Maybe that'll be one way to do it. Go on, John.
Oh, I got a couple questions. One is, you know, I got a typical suburban lawn, and I was reading an article about clover and the advantages of clover. And I got some kind of bare spots. And so I ordered some micro clover, and I'm going to kind of use it to kind of see if I could fill in some spots, make it a little greener, healthier. And I'm just curious what you think of that strategy.
Yeah, I think that there is definitely some validity to use, and it absolutely provides more pollen and nectar than a lawn that's dominated by grasses. So yeah, you're increasing the diversity of the the plant community in your lawn. But most clovers are not native. I feel like especially that are being used to like supplement lawns or to use in pasture for grazing animals. They're typically not plants. And I think this is the when like trying to choose like come up with a plant selection for a landscape, the native plants are they're going to provide a broader and fuller picture for the wildlife community. A clover will flower for a very long time and provide a lot of nectar and pollen for bumblebees and honeybees, and which aren't native, and probably a few other bee species. You won't really see a lot of butterflies or moths feeding on them, and they don't provide food for all stages of the in-life. Native plants really provide a full package. There's a lot of talk about monarch butterflies being on the endangered list now, and the monarch butterflies don't need the flowers of milkweeds. Like they can consume nectar from like a huge diversity of plants, but they can only, I'm not an entomologist, so I might say something incorrectly here, but they can only feed their larval stage with milkweed plants. So they need to consume the plant material to so that they can complete their reproductive cycle. And that's where a lot of the non-natives fall short. Yeah, like most pollinators and most insects can eat non-native, eat pollen and nectar from native plants like clovers, but they don't provide like the support for the full life cycle for those,
Thank you. Yeah. The second
insects.
question, I've got an area that's fully shaded, and I'd like to use native plants, something flowering, maybe a woodland flower, or ideally something red or blue, which would complement what else I've got. Is there anything you'd suggest? Again, this is full shade, so I know
Yeah,
that's more challenging.
yeah. I mean, Michigan is a state that is dominated by a forest ecosystem. There's like we have far more like pre-Western settlement. There's far more forest in Michigan than there was grassland or prairie. So there are a lot of good like forest understory plants to choose. There's Solomon's seal, there's Solomon's plume, Jacob's ladder. Jacob's ladder is a really high quality. That's a blue flower. That's very high quality. Yeah, has a high food quality for insects, and it also has it maintains like a nice presence throughout the season. A lot of the woodland plants tend to be more ephemeral, where like after the tree canopy is out, the plants will die back because there isn't enough sun after that to sustain them through the rest of the season. But Jacob's Ladder is a great plant to use. There are wild geraniums that do very well in the shade. Red flower, the cardinal flower does really well in a shade planting, providing it's wet. So that's a little bit tough because a lot of times the shade is being created by trees that use up use a ton of water to stay hydrated, and so a lot of times shade plantings aren't as wet as you might think they would be. But if you do have a wet spot in your shade planting, the cardinal flower is a great choice. Trying to think of some irises. The blue flag iris does well in the shade. There are, yeah, and then if you're interested in adding spring ephemerals, which are very important, they bloom much earlier than the majority of the other perennials that are persistent through the season. There are a number of different trilliums that you can purchase, like bare root stock for. Virginia bluebells are a great option. There's I'm trying to think what else. The cohoshes. So there's like a black cohosh and a blue cohosh. They're both really pretty strikingly beautiful plants that have a lot of good presence in the garden, and yeah, and can definitely handle shade.
You gave me a lot of good options. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Ben, when you are preparing a site, there was some tension when we were working on a rain garden about how to kill all the old stuff, the grasses that we didn't want. How do you approach that, and do you have particular approaches that you like better than others?
Yeah, so it's definitely like the kind of choice is to use chemicals or to not use chemicals most of the time. The chemical option is generally glyphosate if you're just dealing with lawn, and then maybe a heavier hitting herbicide like 2,4-D if you have a lot of invasive thickets or trees that you're trying to eliminate as well. It's very understandable that a lot of folks don't get very excited about spraying a bunch of chemicals before installing something that's supposed to be promoting life. The other options are I feel like I might say this wrong, but solarization or oculation. So solarization is using clear plastic that heats up everything to a point where it terminates. And then oculation is using black plastic to prevent any light from getting through, and so yeah, those methods take a lot more time than using chemicals. I think that when they're executed correctly, they are as effective. but they definitely take time, and you definitely have to put the time in to do it right, or you like won't effectively remove the plant community that you're trying to eliminate.
Thank you.
Did somebody have a question? Oh, and then there's also the issue of plastic. So if when you're talking about doing thousands and thousands of square feet of installations, you're going to need a lot of, like, a literal ton of plastic to achieve that, or to cover that much ground. The plastic as real as you would hope or you would think it would be, which is a little bit alarming. That plastic has to go somewhere, but like even if you're buying high quality agricultural plastics, which you absolutely have to, if you're going to like smother a planting with clear or black plastic, you have to buy, or you have to use, an agricultural film. If the like plastics that are used for like that, like a painter would use, or that somebody would like the visqueen plastic that you would line the like a crawl space with, or something like that, that stuff will break down and just shed millions and millions of pieces of little plastic all over your garden within like a couple of months. Like you won't get anywhere near you won't get anywhere close to the point of a complete site preparation before that plastic starts to break down, and then you have a million pieces of plastic in your soil, which like can't realistically can't be any better than having a bunch of Roundup in your soil. But all plastics do do degrade, even the high quality ones. They you can feel them starting to get brittle after your second or third season of use. So yeah, there are drawbacks. Those are the two methods that I would recommend. There are absolutely drawbacks to both of those options. But as of now, that those are kind of the options I feel like we have to work with.
Thank you. That was a very complete answer.
Yeah. I have a never-ending landscaping project, as Leroy knows, and I've been negotiating on and off with a landscaper, and we have a plan, but he has not been terribly enthusiastic about using natives because he has his own sources that he likes to buy his plants from. And I'm kind of tired of waiting, another year. I've had like a blank slate in my property now for about a year and a half. And I just want to move with this. If I go with, the cultivars, am I going to interfere with adding natives later? His concern is that natives will be very invasive, and he wants to keep things very much in control. So do you have any suggestions of how I can have my cake and eat it too, at least at some point?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the native plants. So there are good cultivars, or like nativars. Like there are cultivated native plants that are, that still provide a great ecological benefit, but also are more well-behaved in a garden space. There's a lot, especially like in the Echinacea genus. So there are a lot of coneflowers that are, still very popular with pollinators, but maybe less pushy than the wild genotype. Less pushy and a little more organized than the wild genotype echinaceas that are available. But there are absolutely native wild genotype plants that are not quite so aggressive, or they're not as aggressive as bee balm or some of the milkweeds, or I feel like there are.
Can you give me some examples? Like, I'm looking for a pathway kind of area that,
Mhm.
in front of my house.
Is it what is the sun exposure?
I've been measuring it. It's about 4 to 6 hours. It's afternoon. It's a western exposure, so you
Okay,
don't get
so
any
yeah,
morning light.
I feel like
Yeah.
that's I feel like so many of the native plants are just like far more adaptable to sun exposure than you would like. A lot of plants get thought of or labeled as full sun plants, but absolutely thrive and do well in do well in partial sun. So you're looking, so it's like the entrance to your house.
It's actually, what he's going to do is build a little garden bed. Here's the front of my house, then here's a little garden bed, and the garden bed is going to kind of border the very front of my house, like a little path, because there's a walkway directly in front of my house that goes into the front steps. So it's
Okay.
going to be kind of there, and he wants to wind it so it doesn't look like just a flat strip of things,
Yeah. I feel like certainly there are different black-eyed Susans that are, and especially if you're looking for cultivated varieties, there's a lot of Rudbeckias that are going to be good in your application. They they flower for a very long time, and have been a popular landscaping plant for ever. I really wish I knew my cultivars better. I used to grow plant a German company back when I worked in Maryland, so I know all the German cultivar names, but I don't know any of the English cultivar names.
What about well-behaved natives for that application?
Yeah,
I'm losing contact.
Oh yeah, you do sound like you're breaking up a little bit. Can you hear us?
I partly hear you. I'm sorry.
Can everyone else
I'll get
hear
I'll
me?
get the recording later, so you can just.
Yeah, we can hear you, Ben. So
Okay.
since we're recording this, I'll share this with Athena and everyone else later. So go ahead, and we can hear you fine.
Yeah. So yeah, plants that are like stay in their lane a little bit better than a lot of the varieties that have kind of absolutely given native plant gardening a bad reputation. The great blue lobelia is a great option, especially in a partial sun scenario. Prairie phlox, and the woodland phlox. Both of those plants are really wonderful to use. um, the the blue flag iris. Blue flag iris is a very attractive plant. The rattlesnake master. Rattlesnake master is a really attractive plant. Its flower, I think, is maybe a little underwhelming, but but like the insects really like it, and the actual like physical characteristics of the plant are just very attractive for the entirety of the season. It's just this like really wonderful blue green kind of spiky foliage. But yeah, it's really it is not a aggressive plant at all. But it's persistent. It isn't one that needs to be babied. The purple cone flower, I don't feel like is yeah, I mean, I feel like it's every bit as usable as a landscape plant in a more standard garden as many of the other daylilies or some of the other more generic non-native things that you see. And there's a lot more. I feel like I should be like looking at my like inventory list or something as I'm trying to rattle these off. The sneeze weeds are great. They yeah, they aren't particularly wild. Wild senna is not a plant that spreads aggressively or grows really tall and falls over. And I think that's another thing that design folks don't quite understand. The growth habit of a lot of native plants becomes unruly and becomes unattractive, basically because the planting site is too rich. Like if you amend your planting site with compost and fertilizer, the plants that you plant there will they will have a surplus of nutrients, and they will grow in a way that is like hard to organize and hard to control. But if you don't amend your site, and if you just plant into the soil that you have, and if you plant, that's the other thing, planting more densely. I think the idea of open space in a lot of American landscapes, it just doesn't, it's not something that you really see in the natural world. You don't, there aren't just like random bits of mulch in between all of the plants out there. So when you try to maintain negative space around a lot of the native plants, they nature abhors a vacuum, and that's what the plants do. So yeah, so when we're planting our native plants, we're planting everything on like 16-inch centers, and expecting that the other plant communities are going to be keeping the keeping the varieties in check and preventing them from like having an unattractive growth habit or from spreading uncontrollably. So yeah, planting more densely than I think is like mainstream conventional in most American landscapes.
Everything you've said is pretty much the opposite of what I've been told. And I've been kind of saying the same thing, because even when I plant vegetables, I don't have to deal with weeds if I plant the lettuce close to each other, because they, you know, I mean, it just kind of makes sense. It's a different way of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel like yeah, thinking of a landscape as a as like a biological system and not as a static installation or sculpture is a different way of thinking about it. And yeah, I don't really think that most, you know, it's not the way that people like that are in the landscaping industry learn how to landscape. But yeah, I think that is changing, and people are, you know, starting to, you know, I think the needle is moving on that point. But yeah, whether or not there are like enough professionals out there to see it through or not, I guess remains to be seen. But yeah, I think people are learning.
Is there any damage done to kind of beginning with that approach and then maybe calling you in next spring and say, help me fill this in?
No, yeah, I would be happy to do that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Working with an already existing landscape is fine. I know like a lot of people who are just like really enthusiastic members of the perennial plant community. They get like, so, you know, like they want the PPA's perennial plant of the year in their garden, and which are all cultivated plants. And you know, like they that culture. But you know, they also still want to, you know, include like, you know, some element of you know, like more wild plants into their landscape. And I think that there's absolutely like room for both of those ideas and concepts to like exist simultaneously. We have non-native plants in our garden. I love ligularias. So like we have a little collection of ligularias, and yeah, I definitely am not a like a zealot in that way.
I was going to ask you about mulch, and you sort of answered my question. But I'm hopeful that mulch can make my relatively untamed yard look a little more organized here and there, at least. But do you have any thoughts on types of mulch, or whether or not to abandon it altogether?
So when we're doing an installation, we mulch the first year, but then plant with the expectation that the plant community will be dense enough and complete enough that you don't need to mulch in subsequent seasons, that the like dead plant material will essentially be the mulch for next year's garden. So like if we were to look at our garden out front of our house, there just is not there's not room for weeds. There are plants that are like every plant community is filling up its space, and that's really, to me, that's what that's the aesthetic that I like, which is, you know, one reason that it is that way. but also it is, I think, lower maintenance in terms of the amount of inputs. And that being said, we still do, there are just different inputs. We don't spread mulch every season, but every season we do have to rein in some of the plants that have spread uncontrollably, or if there is something that just isn't really thriving, we just decide that we're gonna try something else in that location. So maybe it's a little more interactive in that way and a little more maintenance in that way, but we're not buying tons of mulch every season and reapplying mulch. We're just using the dense, we also have our planting is like very high percentage, herbaceous perennials and grasses. We have some shrubs, we don't have a lot. And I think that helps with that as well.
Great. I'd love to see some pictures. If you want to email some along, I'll be happy to share them with the group. Or any
I can
other
absolutely do that. Yeah.
other
I can put together,
additional information you want to share is so welcome. We have about 10 more minutes here, and want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to ask all the questions they have, and there'll probably be more. So I'll be happy to, if you'd like, I could share your email, Ben, or you
that
can
would be
put that
great.
put that in the chat window. Go ahead, Sarah and Athena.
So I've been told that I have these two grasses in my front that just keep spreading and growing and getting bigger. And I don't care for it. So I've been told that I can do a native sedge grass that does, is that true, where sedge doesn't expand and get larger?
Sedges don't multiply in the same way as some of the, so you're talking about like an ornamental grass, not like your lawn, right?
Yeah, not the lawn.
Okay. Sedges, but sedges spread, they don't spread, they don't have that same like clumping grass growth habit, but they do spread. They produce a lot of viable seed every season, and so you'll end up like sedges all over the place. They're really great. I feel like we grow a bunch of different sedges, and we really like them. But I would not characterize them like they're an aggressive plant. Or like most of the like commercially available ones are. There's so many different sedges, so there's probably some that aren't. But the ones that I'm aware of being locally available are, for the most part, pretty aggressive. But they're wonderful plants. They're utilized a lot in like rain garden plantings, because they can handle periods of being submerged. They have deep root system.
There was a question in the chat about white-tailed deer and plants that won't attract white-tailed deer.
That and that being at farmers markets, we get that question all of the time. There are a lot of like what I would consider deer resistant plants, but they're definitely not like deer proof. There are a lot of plants that like the curious deer are like, they're, especially in suburban and urban settings, are very used to eating people's landscapes. They just like, that's like where they go to eat. so I feel like they always try everything, even if it isn't necessarily like nutritious or good for them. But the yeah, deer resistant plants. I'm definitely not going to say deer proof. But the Joe Pye weeds are deer resistant. So there's a couple of different Joe Pyes, and also the bone sets are deer resistant. They both are like very similar looking plants. One has purple flowers and the bone sets have white flowers. The ironweed is deer resistant. The rudbeckias are for the most part deer resistant. I think some are more deer resistant than others. But I think it's a orange cone flower or the perennial black-eyed Susan. I think those end up being more deer resistant than and they're also more perennial than a lot of the other rudbeckias that are like less permanent garden plants. The echinaceas are deer resistant. The sedges are deer resistant. The creatures don't get super excited about them. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of options. There are a lot of deer resistant options out there, and a lot of regularly and commercially available options. And I think yeah, like especially compared to like the non-native options that are out there. I don't think that you would have any problem finding like a diverse array of plants that are deer resistant.
I wanted to ask you about mulch. If you have any preferred, I mean, I'm looking at, the double ground pine, which looks nutritious bark, and then there's the mixed hardwood pines. And then there are others as well. Do you have any preferences or thoughts on the differences?
I purchased as well. Yeah, I feel like we use I know the double ground pine is probably the most like attractive of the mulches. I feel like it just like looks nicer, and it's like a better texture to work with too, I think. But it's more expensive. So I think so typically we purchase the I forget what it's called, but it's like Hammond Farms. I don't know if you're familiar with Hammond Farms. Is it pretty much what we use?
Is it Pro Bark that you use?
Pro Bark, yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, and it is
mixed hardwoods.
Yeah, mixed hardwoods. It isn't dyed a weird color, and its point is good. But yeah, it's what we've always used and have always had good luck with it.
Do you have what are the differences in using that from the double ground pine? I mean, would either one be equally?
It lasts longer. The double ground pine is yeah, it breaks down much faster. Which I think in most of the installations that I'm trying to execute, I'm trying to get to the stage where mulch isn't required. So I want that initial mulching to be a mulching that lasts for a couple of seasons.
What
because
about,
I don't want to have to do it again.
What about the acidity though? I mean, I'm worried that my soil's pretty neutral from the tests I've done. I'm gonna probably have some professional tests done at MSU, but I need more acid loving, conditions. And I understood that the pine provides that more than the hardwood.
Yeah, so I think the pine bark mulch is definitely going to have a lower pH than the hardwood. And the soil, like pine needles, the soil under pine trees or in pine forest is like generally going to be more acidic than a hardwood coniferous forest. And this is very generally, it's definitely not always the case. But I don't actually know whether or not like mulch as an amendment is enough to move the needle on soil pH. Like I don't know if it's acidic enough or if it interacts with the soil enough or in the right way to actually move the needle on the soil pH.
What would
So
you
like when I've done like blueberry
Yeah.
plantings,
right?
and I want to create more acidic soil, I incorporate just huge quantities of peat. So like the soil that you end up planting your blueberries in is like half native soil and half peat that is, mined in Canada and purchased at a store. And that's how I've done blueberries, and like hydrangeas. There are like a number of species and varieties of plant out there that would prefer acidic soil. And here in Lansing, we really do tend to run, at least in my experience, we tend to run more neutral to basic than acidic, which I think is kind of unique in Michigan. I feel like elsewhere in the state, it really does tend to be the opposite of that. But that's what I've found in doing lots of soil tests all around Michigan.
That's kind of one of my concerns because I'm going to have all this planting done and it looks like everything that I'm going to have planted is acidic, requiring trees and all the plants that I'm looking at. And I don't want to run this show. I have to be very careful because the landscaper has their, they do their thing, but I also don't want it to fail, and I don't know. I guess I could recommend or suggest what do we do for all the acidic, to add acidic loving plants.
I mean, you can amend with like elemental pelletized salt. You can purchase that at a grain elevator and do a side dressing of that around your plants in the same way that you would do a side side dress, like vegetable plants with like time release fertilizer or something like that. It's like you want to eye protection and glove. It isn't that scary of a chemical to work with.
Is it an organic?
Ben, I gotta cut us off because we've got 10 people
Okay.
here that need to move on. But
Yep.
Please connect with Ben further if you have more questions. And I want to thank you on behalf of all of us for spending some, action-packed hour with us sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That went by very fast.
It was
Yeah.
phenomenal. Thank you. Really
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
Hope you'll come back again. And we do this
Yeah,
every
anytime.
Wednesday. Sometimes we have a special guest like yourself, but if you have suggestions for future speakers, feel free to hit me up. Any other parting comments or questions before we sign off here?
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Very welcome. Yeah, very, very happy to be here. And yeah, thank you all for having me. And yeah, I will I'll email you some pictures. And then yeah, feel free to yeah, share our contact information freely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really been interesting. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Thanks, Ben.
Bye-bye.